Hi, I'm Kyle Limbaha, and today I'll be talking about the Fujifilm X-E4. Now, there's a reason why I was very excited about the Fujifilm X-E4, and that has a lot to do with my first experiences with Fujifilm cameras. My very first Fujifilm camera was the X100S, which I absolutely loved. It was this nice compact camera, but with a really nice lens, really great photos, and it was the first time I had that experience of like, oh my god, I don't really need to edit these photos after I've taken them. I sold that off because at the end of the day, at that time, I just had too many cameras, and at the time as well, the Fuji cameras didn't have manual controls for their video functions. Then later on, as I was doing a lot of cinematography on my Sony a7S, I really didn't want to take that camera out for everyday stuff and taking photos because it was my workhorse camera. So I got myself a secondhand Fujifilm X-E1, which is another camera that, again, made me fall in love with the Fujifilm system. Again, I didn't have to really edit the photos afterwards. I really liked the images that I got, and I loved the size of the camera because I really have a soft spot for small cameras that pack a wallop. And I also really like rangefinder style cameras. I just like their shape and their form factor. So when I started working with Fujifilm, and one of the questions that I always asked from the very beginning when they passed me the XH1 was, is an X-E4 coming out? Come on, tell me an X-E4 is coming out. And Fuji have always had this thing of, they're very good in this way. They will never leak stuff to me. I always have to find it out on a website, So when the X-E4 was announced, I was super excited. But it was during the pandemic. They'd already passed a lot of their demo units to other influencers and stuff like that. And also, because of the pandemic, the supply chain for these cameras, the supply chain for everything really has been really messed up. So even though the Fujifilm X-E4 was announced earlier this year, it didn't really start coming in for sale until a couple of months after that. There were a lot of pre-orders. And from what I found out from Fuji is they were really surprised that people wanted this camera. Which I'm not, because like I said, I like this form factor, I like this size. So finally, I managed to get my hands on one, and that was like a week or so before the latest lockdown, where we were all completely forced to stay back home again. So there wasn't really much for me to shoot, but that's when I started doing my weekly vlogs. So I thought that would be a great way for me to test out this camera and see what it can do. So a lot of the little intro sequences for my vlog were all shot with the Fujifilm X-E4, and it totally did not disappoint. Starting to use it, it was like, an old jacket that still fits. Everything was very intuitive because I had been looking for a nice small B camera for myself for the same reasons that I bought an X-E1 back in the day when I was using an A7S. I wanted something that I didn't feel too worried about bringing around, that was small and still had a lot of the functionality that I wanted. And the X-E4 doesn't disappoint. Because I've been wanting to find a small camera, I tried some of their other versions, like the X-T200 and the X-A7. And there is nothing wrong with those cameras. It's just not for me, and I'll tell you why. The menu system and the ergonomics. One of the main things that I like about Fujifilm cameras is their old school design, the knobs and dials. I totally prefer that to a touchscreen system. And the X-A7 is a very touchscreen heavy system. The X-T200 as well, yes, you can set dials or whatever, but its menu system is very similar to the X-A7. Those are more entry-level cameras. And they're very obviously designed by their menu system for people that are used to shooting with their phones to move on to a mirrorless camera. I get it. And I'm sure over time I could learn how to use them. But just picking up the X-E4, I didn't have to look at the manual at all. I didn't have to faff about with menu systems, just picked it up. Oh, there's the Q button, there's the joystick. Some of the buttons moved around a bit, but that's cool. So it was incredibly easy for me to start using it. Now, if you're one of those guys that likes all the technical specifications, the bit rates and pixel peeps and blah, 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 go to another video because this is gonna be more like a general what I like and what I dislike about the camera. First thing I did was stick on my 7 Artisans 25mm 1.4. Right off the bat, I was enjoying the whole experience of just using the camera. Because another thing that I like about Fuji cameras is the viewfinders. I just like viewfinders in general, especially when I'm using manual lenses when taking photos, because one, I came from an era of film, I'm kind of used to it, and two, I don't like taking a photo like that. You know what I mean? I like to have it right on my face. Like the video functions on it are pretty decent. It has the same sensor as the X-T4, 4K video, manual control, which is great. You have all the same film simulations as the X-T4 as well. It uses the same batteries as the X-T3 and the cameras before that, the W126S. So I've got tons of those, so that's easy as well. It's super light, super compact, super handy. You know, I love this camera. I really do. Like, I really, really enjoy it because it has all the things that I like about Fuji cameras in a very small package. Now, one of the things I was considering when it was released was the X100V. Because again, like I said, I also started with the X100S, which is also a really nice compact shaped camera, which I really enjoy using. That is also a more high-end camera, you know, its price range is similar to the body of the X-E4. So it was really trying to figure out, like, do I want to spend the money on that camera? Because again, like my X100S, I loved it, but I didn't really use it that much because it's a fixed lens. And, you know, it was a fun camera, but I couldn't justify the price range. And a lot of people have talked about the X-E4 as like a mini X100, which is kind of true. The one thing that it doesn't have that the X100V has, and the X100 line in general, is that lens, that super thin lens that they have on the X100s, which is nice and sharp. Now the X-E4, when they released it with an upgraded 27mm f2.8. I didn't get a chance to try that lens because stock is low and they didn't have one for me to mess around with. But I did used to have the old 27mm 2.8, the first generation. And it's a very handy pancake lens. I'm pretty sure the new version has a whole bunch of updates. You can check out some other YouTube videos from other people to see how that stacks up. But I don't think it'll compare to the X100's lens. I really wish they would just make that lens as a separate lens that you could buy for your X series cameras because it's a very good lens. Like the X100V is a beautiful camera. I love it, but I can't justify it. X-E4, I kind of can. I can totally see myself using it in the event that I need something small that I can clamp or attach somewhere really easily because it's super light compared to my X-T4 and my X-T3 or my X-H1 before. It's about 360 grams without a lens, that is light. Even though this camera is quite small, I've totally been able to use it to shoot parts for my vlog, for example, and just move around and shoot stuff in my house. And that's one of the things I like about a small camera is that it's light and easy and I don't have to worry about it too much. Like in one of the videos, I can stick it in the fridge, I can use a light tripod and just move it around, clamp it somewhere. It's very, very simple. The way that they've set up the dials and everything, you have a nice front dial, function button at the top, the Q button, which is very handy, and the menu system and joystick, as always. In terms of dials, apart from the front dial, which is a multi-use dial, you have your shutter speed and your exposure bracket. At first, I was like, I wish they had the ISO as a dial instead of the, exposure bracket. But then as I start using it, like, it's got a really handy system where shutter speed's controlled at the top, fine adjustments are controlled from the dial at the front, and then changing the settings between ISO or shutter speed, you simply click the front dial and it switches over. So it's very simple to use. And again, with the Q menu as well, use the joystick to move around and the front dial to adjust each setting. Like I said, it's got the same sensor as the X-T4 and it has the current menu, so it does also borrow the same menu style as the X-T4, where if you're in video mode, the menu is specifically for video, which is very cool. And then when you're in photograph mode, it's very specifically for photographs, which is one of those things that I loved with the X-T4, and I'm glad they put that into this. Changing the drive is a separate button, so that's also quite handy. A bunch of people have complained about the way the screen at the back flips out because it looks kind of flimsy in the connection, but so far I've had no complaints. Now, in terms of the ports on the side, you have a USB-C for charging, and you can also use it as a power supply, although it is a type of power supply where it's just charging your battery. You can't take out the battery and then just plug in a USB-C and power it all through the day. And it has a micro HDMI out, which is what you'd expect for a camera this size, and a 3.5mm jack for a microphone or for an external shutter release. Now, in terms of monitoring your audio, unfortunately, it's doing the same thing as the X-T4, where it's a USB-C to headphone jack adapter, which I hate. I don't like it with the X-T4, especially since that is supposed to be designed for video work, and it's a bit ridiculous not being able to listen to the audio whilst recording it and powering the camera. So I am not a fan of this whole USB-C to earphone jack thing. I think it's ridiculous. I really hope they change it. Especially for the X-T4, because they do have space for it. They have a 2.5mm shutter release port, and I'd rather just take that out and put a headphone jack. That would be a whole lot easier. The X-T3 has a headphone jack, so what's the problem? But yes, even with its small size and compact form factor, this camera is totally usable as a video production camera for, vlogs, YouTube videos, as a B cam, totally usable. Because right now, unless I'm actually showing the X-E4 in this vlog, everything here has been shot with the X-E4. All the bits, this entire bit, me speaking to you, everything with the X-E4, and it totally works. Now, most of this video I've been talking about the things I really like about this camera with a few things that I find annoying, but let's get into the things that I really don't like about this camera, or which might make a big difference on whether or not you want to get a camera like this. First of all, even though it's a super small size, which I love, because of that size, there's a lot of things that the camera can't do. Now, we've already talked about the ports at the side and how there's no earphone jack, but they also did that with the X-E4, so I don't think that's the real problem. To me, when it comes to a size this small, one of the things you're going to miss out on is that super sweet sensor stabilization that they have on the X-T4 and the XS10. I would love that in a camera this size, but I'm guessing that it is way too small for them to be able to fit that in. So that's kind of understandable. Another thing when you have a camera this size, and which I discovered while shooting this vlog, because I'm shooting it with the X-E4, is when it's a camera this size and everything's all packed up and small and together, overheating becomes an issue when it comes to video. Now, I'm pretty sure you won't have this problem with photography, but for video, this might be a serious concern. Right now, as I'm shooting this, the camera is on a HDMI out going straight to my Shogun, and I had the USB-C cable going to a PD port for direct power. And about 15 minutes in, it completely shut off because it overheated. And I have the air conditioning on. Now, especially if you're in Malaysia, that might be an issue because in Malaysia, it's very, very hot. And overheating, even on big cameras, is an issue. Like on my first day of shooting Showdown, which we were shooting on Red Epics and Scarlets, one of the Red Epics just completely stopped working and it was a major overheating malfunction. So it happens to a whole bunch of the different cameras over here. I've had overheating problems with the X-T3 when I was shooting in a very hot space where we didn't have much chance to cool down the camera. But that didn't kick in until like really far into the production. This one overheated in 15 minutes. I am guessing it's because it's coming in with the, direct power from the USB-C, and it's not really recording. The screen is completely on, the HDMI is going out, so it can overheat. And when I touched it, it was warm. And it's probably from, like I said, the USB-C power is actually the USB-C constantly charging the battery. So that's probably adding to the heat as well. So right now, as I continue to shoot, I've taken the USB-C out. So yeah, that can be a very serious issue, especially if you want to do like long form like this. Although if you're shooting outside and switching it on and off repeatedly with different shots, it should be fine like any other mirrorless camera. Speaking of power as well, it is the W126S batteries. That on video can probably give you about an hour if you're lucky. But then again, at the same time, I do like that it's the W126S batteries because those are batteries that have been around for a while. So if you've been a Fuji user using X-T3s and the older X-Es, then you probably have a whole stack of batteries already. I've already spoken about the headphone jack issue, which is annoying as well. Another thing when it comes to a camera this size, once you start using bigger lenses, things get pretty unwieldy. Right now I'm shooting this with the 18mm f2, which is a nice pancake lens, and if you were using the 27mm 2.8 or any of the small XF lenses or XC lenses, which are much lighter and much more compact, you should be fine. But if you start using any of the bigger lenses, then you're gonna get that weird weight distribution thing. Also, speaking of the body and ergonomics, yes, it's a rangefinder shape, so that the lens isn't exactly dead on center. You have much more space on your right hand for holding it, and the lens is slightly to the side, and the viewfinder on the side as well. Everything about that I'm fine with. What I don't kind of get is where the tripod mount screw is, because it's very off center, and I'm not sure why. I would have preferred if the tripod mount screw was at least in line with the lens, so that when you put it on a tripod facing directly, you have it facing straight. I've been trying to figure it out, like, is it there so that you could pop the battery out really easily? Well, not necessarily, because it depends on the size of your tripod base. So I'm not quite sure what's up with that. Another thing when it comes to the video options is, yes, it does shoot 4K, and that is great, but one of the annoying things with it is that it can only shoot up to 200 megabits per second. I can kind of understand that because of the small size, but one thing that I really wish was in this camera, and unfortunately it's not on the X100V either, is H.265. Ever since I started using the X-T3s and the X-T4s, I've really gotten to love H.265 as a format because of the size and the amount of detail you get with that size. Yes, when editing, it can be annoying, but I'm the type of guy that makes proxies for anything over 1080, regardless. I got a 32 gig RAM computer and 6 gig on the graphics card. It's a 1060. Still, I don't like editing in native 4K unless it's in DNX HR. So missing H.265 is a bit annoying because I really like that file format and it means you can fit a lot more videos on the card. You know, it's still H.264 MOV, which is easier for most people to edit, but not having the 400 megabits per second option is, you know, a bit annoying, but it's still totally usable. And like I said before with the power thing, that to me is the main worrisome issue there, because it would really be nice if you could just have this on constant power, because I think this would be a great vlogging camera, especially if the screen could flip to a selfie, either sideways or from the top. Like either way, that would be great, because then this would be a really nice, compact, you know, vlogging camera. You can tell that the X-A7 is designed more for that, but that does make me question why you can't have a similar type of screen for the X-E4. And having it overheat so quickly was kind of scary because you don't want to overheat a camera to the point that you ruin the internals. Myself and a lot of other people, when the A7S came out, we've all burnt our motherboards by using external power. A friend of mine actually managed to burn not just the motherboard but the sensor and had to replace everything, which was pretty messed up. You kind of don't want that when you're using it for video. But like I said as well, like you wouldn't want to use this as your professional A camera. To me, this is a nice B or C camera or a nice vlogging camera. You really have to keep those things in mind when thinking about whether you want to purchase this and what you're going to use it for. One of the other cool things that comes with the X-E4 is that, like the newer X range of cameras, you can use this as a webcam through the USB-C port. Now, this is something that Fujifilm have brought up ever since the pandemic because everyone needs a webcam these days. And it's a great function. I actually used it for when I was doing a live stream with Fuji to talk about the X-T4 and shooting video with Fuji cameras in general. And it worked great, like it pairs up with the app just great. But you're stuck with the battery power. When you have the USB-C connected to the computer, that is not powering your camera as well. You need to use the battery power, and my battery died, I think about 30 to 45 minutes into the stream. The X-T4 can shoot at, which was annoying, and I had to change the batteries. So yeah, the power thing is something you really, really need to think about and consider when it comes to using this camera and buying it. All that being said, I love this camera. It does have its flaws, yes, but I wouldn't use this as my main camera. This would be my fun camera. The camera that I would maybe bring around on holidays to shoot snaps and shoot vlogs, if I can go on holidays since there's COVID right now, or just, you know, shooting little B-roll for my videos in general. I prefer using this than my big camera simply because it's so light. I'm surprised that Fuji didn't think that people would want this camera as much as people did, because there was like a huge back order of pre-orders. This is a totally fun camera. I totally recommend it if you're into Fujis, if you like small cameras, especially if you're coming from the X range and don't really like, you know, the more basic menu touchscreen layout of, let's say, the X-A7s or the X-T200s or stuff like that. Of course, you also have to bear in mind that because this is a more higher end, smaller camera, this is double the price of the X-T200. But for me, like, I would totally want to get this as opposed to the X-T200 or X-A7 simply because it just fits like a glove, and I really, really dig it. So yes, that's my review for the X-E4. I hope you liked it, and if you like the type of stuff that I'm doing on this channel, then please check out the other videos. And I also do my weekly vlogs every week. Well, at least I try to. So please check those out. Till next time, thanks.